So what are we up to, you're probably wondering? This doesn't say Alice Chalmers on it at all. It's a Hart Parr. What are you doing messing around with a tractor that doesn't say Alice on it, Jacob? You're probably thinking. Well, it is green with red wheels. Does that count? It's kinda looks like an Alice. No, this is a Hart Parr 1836. I have just added this to my collection. This is a tractor I have been wanting to get for many, many years. This is a family tractor, a distant family at that, but it is a family tractor. I've known about it since I was just a little tiny guy. So basically ever since I've kind of gotten into tractors, let's say well over 20 years ago, I've been kind of wanting to add this to my collection. But up until just recently, the family was not interested in getting rid of things, but they recently have decided to get rid of a few things, and they knew that they would be going to a very good home by selling it to me. It would stay in the family. So they decided to give me a call and, hey, are you still interested? And I said, yes, I am. Let's make a deal. So last weekend, the folks came out and we hauled this home. Well, not home, to Kenmare. We have it at display at the Kenmare Pioneer Village, where I volunteer. Regular viewers of the channel recognize I help keep a lot of these tractors running. The rest of this stuff, just for the people that aren't familiar, the rest of this stuff in here is not mine. I just volunteer, help keep the stuff going. But this tractor is mine now. So for the time being, it's going to be on display here so I can work on it as I have time and get it going. And other people get to enjoy it too, out in the public. So that's kind of a win-win for everybody. Oh, this is a big long story. We will get into it more as the videos progress. But the short version of it is this tractor has not been touched in over 50 years. It has been stored in a barn. So it's been inside, out of the weather all these years. But it has not been touched in over 50 years. So it needs to be completely kind of gone through, everything checked, inspected, oiled, make sure everything is what it's supposed to be. We don't know what condition this was in when it was parked. I kind of assume it was probably a running tractor when it was parked, but the person that would know that has long since passed, and the rest of the family is not really sure on that. So where are we at? We know before Dad and Mom went back to Wisconsin, Dad and I came up here for a little bit and did some basic checking, and I will show you this all eventually. But we pulled the crankcase cover and we looked in there. Everything looks very clean in there. So with a little lubing everything up with some fresh oil, that should be good to go. The oiler does turn, it is free, but I'm going to take that off, completely clean it out, and make sure everything is working properly before we try to fire this up. I'm going to kind of check everything, go through everything before we make any attempt to fire this up, because it's been 50 years. I don't want to rush into anything now and make a foolish mistake and wreck something. Dad and I pulled the valve cover off, looked in there, just a tiny bit of little surface rust, which you would expect to find for a tractor that hasn't ran in 50 years. So that should all clean up very well. I'll take the carburetor off, go through that, clean that all out, make sure everything looks good there. We will pull the, well, I don't know if I'll pull it off, but I'll make sure I'll clean the gas tank out before we use that. It looks pretty clean peeking down inside of there, but we'll give it a good flush. Of course, we'll clean the gas line out. We turned it over, and believe it or not, after 50 years of sitting untouched, the magneto has good hot blue spark to the spark plugs, which is kind of blew my mind. So that should be good enough to go do what we need to do for now. I might eventually send it off to my mag guy and have him just kind of check it all out, but for now they should be good to go. I do have to either fix or replace the end on this spark plug wire. It is, kind of came off, it's loose, it's not a really good connection, so we'll have to address that. Eventually I'll probably just put new spark plug wires on it as well, freshen it up. We're going to check out the governor. Okay, well, to back up, I don't know very much at all about Hart Parrs. I am learning with the rest of you that aren't familiar with these. The few of you that may be familiar with these Hart Parrs, I would like to be your friend. I'm going to need to be picking a lot of people's brains on what I need to know. So if you're an expert on these, be sure to reach out to me, because I'm sure I'll have 1,000 questions. But a few things that I have learned so far to check before you attempt to start a machine that is unknown is to check these governors. I guess the weights and pins in them are known to wear, and if the pins fall out, they fall down into your engine, and of course very bad things happen. So we got to make sure that those are good. I guess there's a lot of the basic things to check. Very important with these is to make sure that your oiler is working, because these are a dry sump engine. Most other tractors you see, you got whatever, 4 quarts of oil in the engine. There's no oil in the crankcase, it's dry. When it's running, this oiler is pumping from the engine. There's a little arm, I'll walk over here and show you, on the side of the oiler. It pumps as the engine turns. I have it disconnected at the moment, because when I initially got the tractor, I thought the oiler was stuck, but it was just ever so lightly stuck. So I disconnected it. But there's an arm down here that connects to your crank. So when the engine is turning, this is going up and down, and that's pumping your oiler. Each of these is a separate pump that regulates a allotted amount of oil pumping, dripping. And there's little sight glass up top so you can see the oil's dripping, and it goes down each line to each important spot on the engine. So it's important that you fill up this oiler when you start the tractor. This oiler has to remain full of oil, because then it drips, it gets used, and then there's oil lines down on the bottom that collect the used oil, and it funnels it to the final drives where it collects. And then in theory, according to the book, periodically you drain the final drives. There's a plug on the bottom of each one, and put some fresh in, and then it just keeps filling up, and you keep draining, filling and draining as necessary. But in reality, typically they leak enough where all the oil just leaks out just as fast as it accumulates. So it uses the oil once and then it's done. It's not like a normal engine where it keeps recirculating the oil. So having a good, properly working oiler is very important with these type of engines. So we'll go through and inspect all that. The clutch is here. It's going to need some attention. I noticed there's some cracked pieces, and it was all kind of seized up. Dad and I sprayed it down with some penetrating oil and got it all moving. I could climb up here and show you how it works. So this is your clutch lever here. So as you move that back and forth, that moves that collar in and out, which moves the linkages for that clutch in and out. But there's, like I said, there's some issues with that. We'll have to address all of that and make sure that's all working properly. Eventually we'll probably take it all apart and make sure, but I mean there's a lot of, you can see there's a lot of worn pins and Put it this way, we'll probably get it going pretty easy, but there's going to be a lot of things that'll need to be rebuilt. You know, game plan for this tractor is, like I said, we're going to make sure it's mechanically sound. We'll get it running, get it driving, and then slowly fix the things that need fixing. You know, rebuild, rebush, whatever. And then somewhere down the road, it's going to be a number of years because I have, as you know, current projects in the works. But somewhere down the road, then this will get complete paint restoration. But for now, we're just going to clean it up, get it mechanically sound and operating, and enjoy it like that for the time being. We have to pull the top of the transmission. This is your transmission here. It's got 3 forward speeds and 1 reverse. So you know, go shift it, you know, reverse, high, low, intermediate, your speeds. So you shift it there. We'll pull that top cover off and inspect all that, see what things look like in there. Of course, we'll clean it all out if necessary. I guess another weak point with these tractors is the steering boxes. They're just kind of under-engineered, often wore out, often broken. So we'll have to check all that out really well and address that as needed. This is your starting tank. It's not currently hooked up because back in the day you'd have gasoline in here. Start your engine on that, warm it up, and then once the engine was warm, you would have tractor fuel in the big tank, and you'd switch it over and run it on tractor fuel. These days, I think everybody pretty much runs them on gasoline, but there again, I don't know if they do a blend of fuels to kind of simulate tractor fuel or what. If you know anything about that, let me know. This here is your governor throttle control. So that goes up to your governor, and then back and down to your carburetor. And of course, we'll get into all this stuff in more detail. This is your magneto control. That controls your advance and retard and grounds out the engine to kill the tractor if you want to, there. This is a brake. I think it's more of a parking brake. From what I understand, there's like a drum in there with a band, I believe is what it is. So if you're working like belt pulley, you can park it and lock the brake. I don't even know honestly which way the brake even works. This was seized up when we got it, but Dad got at least it's wiggling now. Like I said, that's your clutch shifting. Pretty basic machine, really. These are your priming cups. So when you go to start the engine, you can dribble some gas down into the cylinder, close that up. One for each side. The fan is a friction. It's got this paper pulley that when you run it, you tighten up this spring here, which tightens this against your flywheel. So when your flywheel is spinning, it spins your fan shaft to spin your fan blade in there. The exhaust is underneath here. That's your muffler. The exhaust shoots right out the front of the tractor. And that is your air intake up on top. Sucks the clean air from up above. Radiator looks really good. I mean, it's beautiful. And it still has antifreeze in it after all these years, so it must hold fluid, which is awesome. Eventually, of course, we'll probably change out all these hoses and clamps and, you know, update everything, but everything is holding now, so for the time being we're just going to leave well enough alone. But we'll flush the whole system out eventually and all that kind of fun stuff. This is your hand crank here. This is where you crank the tractor. It goes in like so, and you can crank over the tractor. Timing and everything is very important on these tractors, otherwise when they kick back, the handle smashes into the fender here. That's why they're all bent there. And that's why just about every crank you'll see on these has been broken and re-welded from kickbacks and smashing back and breaking the handle. So making sure everything is right is very important. That's kind of what I know right now. I think the goal for today is, it's a beautiful day here. I am going to see if I can round up a pail of some soapy water and some scrub brushes and rags and whatnot and do a little cleaning, because we got 50 years of bird poop on this thing that I would like to wash up a little bit, make it a little more presentable. We did hose it off a little bit before we hauled it here, but you can't hardly even tell. It needs a good scrubbing. Well, it looks slightly better. I got the first couple layers of bird poop cleaned off. Still quite a bit on there, but not quite as filthy as it was. So as you can see, this has been I don't know if I want to say restored or not, but restored in a past life, fixed up, kind of amateur restoration, let's call it. It's not even the right color green. They just hand lettered what would have been decals back on, which I'm not knocking them too much. I mean, at least they cared enough about this machine to fix it up. It needs a lot more work. Things have been worked on. There's several different colors of green as people, I suppose, worked on things over the years. I don't know if any of them are actually the right color green. But so I think the next order of business is we're going to look at this oiler a little bit. The more I look at it, I think one of my friends is actually correct. I sent him a couple of pictures initially of the tractor, kind of as found, and he even observed that, I'm not even sure if you got the right oiler or at least the right top. He didn't think this machine would have this oiler with this type of sight glass. It would have been just a clear sight glass with no metal framework. And I went, oh, okay, that's news to me. I don't know anything about these. The more I look at things here, cleaning it up, the more I've noticed the way this oiler is mounted does not seem correct. I'm pretty sure this has been changed. The way they got this spacer with non-correct hardware, kind of like an adapter kit. So that stud there, and the other stud, I think, is where the original oiler would have mounted. And if we walk around to the other side, it has a similar stud and stud where they utilized the one. So I don't think that's actually probably the correct oiler the more I look at it. I'm sure it'll work just fine. Any experts out there, let me know. So that's something if this is indeed the wrong one, I'll try to hunt down the correct one to put on there eventually. And that kind of explains why some of these lines seem to be a little bit not quite, I suppose they bent them a little bit to make it work with this one. We'll probably end up redoing a lot of that too, because I see like that nut there. I get to focus, that nut there is cracked. It's a mix match of types of nuts. They just kind of made what they had work. Where does that one go? There. Which there again, I'll give them a lot of credit. At least they kept this tractor going. But there's a lot of little things like that that aren't quite correct and original that we will improve upon. So let's see if I can get all of these fittings here cracked loose, and we'll get these mounting bolts loose. I'm going to take this whole oiler right off the tractor, and we'll bring it back to the shop and work on it there on the convenience of the workbench. Ultimately, to clean it all out, I think we can take this top off to check everything, but yeah, we'll get it off the tractor first.